Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm a registered psychotherapist at Church Wellesley Counseling and Psychotherapy, and today I'm answering burning questions about therapy. The first question is, have you ever cried during a session with a client? Yes, definitely. This is something, it's so normal. I think, when we're, as a therapist, you're really sitting with people through things that are the hardest moments of their lives, really. And so it is really emotional. It can be really tough at times. The one thing that always gets me, where without fail I will always cry, is when people talk about passing of a pet, because I have a pet, and I have lost pets as well. It's such a, I don't know, it just hits so close to home. And this just happened to me last week. I was fully sobbing, I think, with my client talking about the passing of a pet. And so, yes, I have cried more than once, frequently in sessions with clients. The second question is, are there any topics that you personally find hard to talk about with clients? Yes, and probably passing of pets again, because it is very close to home for me. It's interesting when you think about what's hard to talk about, because sometimes when you're a newer therapist, there are things that can be just sort of uncomfortable to talk about because you're just not used to them. But over time, you get very comfortable with things that most people find very uncomfortable. It's really hard to find those kind of things, because ultimately as therapists, if there is something that is really, really distressing for you to talk about, that's usually a sign that maybe this client isn't somebody that you should be seeing at that present moment. Your therapists also have their own stuff going on in their lives, and sometimes if things are just hitting way too close to home, it really can affect their ability or our ability to show up for the client. And so if something is really, really too hard to talk about it, that's a good sign that this is, I need to maybe refer this client to somebody else who has more capacity in this area. But for me at this point, there's not really anything that's off the table for me. The next question is, what's the one thing that you wish clients would stop doing in therapy? There's a few things. The first thing that comes to mind is apologizing. Clients apologize all the time. They apologize for crying. They apologize for not knowing how to answer a question. They apologize for not knowing exactly what to talk about. But all of those things are okay, because the therapy space is kind of meant for that. And definitely never apologize for crying in session. That's the whole point. What's the point of being here if you feel like you have to apologize for crying, right? This is my literal job. My job is to listen to you rant, is to sit with you when you cry, is to ask you challenging questions. That's the whole point of being here. So stop apologizing. The next question is there a mental health buzzword that people misuse all the time? It's hard to really identify one specific buzzword that comes up a lot. I think there is a lot of misuse of clinical jargon and diagnoses, because we're seeing a lot more conversations about mental health happening online. I think people can really misunderstand symptoms and a diagnosis. So if we think about when we see, say, topics or conversations online about autism, and people see sort of one person talking about their experience as someone with autism, it resonates with them. So then they're like, well, this must mean that I also have autism. It could be the case. It can be, a path to explore for you, but there also is a number of symptoms to kind of have to warrant diagnoses. And so when we're picking just one at a time, we really can get into this space of before you know it, I have 7 different diagnoses. And sometimes that's just not helpful. And it can become really complicated in our own identity and understanding who we are and understanding our own agency and what's going on and the nuance. That's the one thing that I find is challenging with social media, is that it doesn't really show us all of the nuance of experiences within like a diagnosis or a label that we might have from a mental health perspective. What's the most life-changing lesson that you learned from a client? This is a really good question because I learn amazing things from my clients all the time. People are incredibly insightful, have incredible experiences, and I think what I've learned in my time as a therapist is really about the resilience of people. And that's not just from one specific client, that's from this job really, and working with people day in and day out. And there are things that you hear about that just are so awful for people to go through. And to see people continue to push through those things and to want to process them and make peace with these things and to have hope for the future and to see ways that their lives can be better. It's really inspiring, and the resilience of people is wild sometimes. That's what's really, I think, the most life-changing. It shows me for myself, but also for people in general, that no matter what happens to you or what you go through, there is not just the possibility, but this sort of definite likelihood that you will be okay. You will be okay despite what happens. You will be okay regardless of all of this like crap that happens to you, because I see that in people. It's incredible. So the last question is, how do you handle a client with a different political or philosophical view than your own? This one is really interesting and can be challenging to navigate as a therapist, because it's not our job to enforce a particular belief system or to encourage people to think a certain way. I do also, and some therapists maybe disagree with me on this, but I do think that a part of my job as a therapist is to encourage people and teach people to have empathy for one another, and also to look at how things in the world might be impacting them. And so for me, I work really from like a feminist background, and I'm rooted in a lot of like anti-oppressive practices. And so sometimes we might go into things and have a very specific like political or philosophical belief system about the world, and not realizing how that belief system is actually harming us or actually causing us to feel poorly about ourselves. I think that's the one that comes up a lot. As a therapist, I think it's important to try to challenge people about the way that they think about things, the way that they see the world. Probably the best example is, a lot of clients of all genders are really impacted by patriarchy and misogyny. And so it's important to challenge our beliefs around that, because it can be making us feel really, really shitty. And so this is where it gets dicey, because it's like I obviously have a very like feminist belief system, and so that's sort of what I try to do, is like challenge, not from a place of me telling you what to believe, but challenge you to think about how your views are impacting you and the people around you, and how your life could look different if you can start to question those beliefs. And we'll see if people are receptive to that. Some clients are not receptive to that, and that's okay. And then we go from there. Thanks so much for sending in your questions. If you have any more questions about therapy, please reach out to me at rachel@cwcp.ca.